lean down. The whole thing. All right, just a smidge. That's fine. Too smidge. Oh, no. Hello, everyone. Welcome. We are so happy to see you all here today. My name is Michelle W. Malkin. I'm the Executive Director here at Temple Ner Tamid. Just have a few short, important announcements for you as we all get settled. Please take a moment to check your cell phone, make sure it's off. It's always the one that you forget to check that rings in the middle of the service. If you have any hearing assistance needs, we have a wonderful new system that any of our ushers or myself can help you with if you need to utilize that. Our restrooms are located behind you across from the kitchen, as well as our all-gender accessible restrooms, which are located in the office here and then downstairs. The elevator to access the downstairs restroom is across from the Biyachad service across from our chapel. We have three wonderful custodians here today, Danny, Glenn, and Gwen. Here's Danny right here, you can wait. If you need anything at all, they have name tags on, so please don't hesitate to ask them for anything you might need. In the unlikely event of an emergency, behind me are 3 emergency exit doors, 1, 2, and 3, and then 2 in the back of the sanctuary, these 2 glass doors. And then there's 1 more down this back hallway across from the kitchen. In case of an emergency, we would exit through these doors and make our way to the very far left of the parking lot, through the bushes and onto, well, there's a path, but through the trees and onto the golf course where we will meet there. The most important thing to remember is just to stay calm and be aware of the people that are around you. There is a first aid kit, CPR kit, and a defibrillator located in our office. But again, we have wonderful ushers around that have corsages, our custodians, and myself in the case of an emergency. I want to thank our lead usher, Carrie, and our head of security, Eric, for ensuring that we have a wonderful, safe experience here today. So again, if you need anything, please let us know. I hope you enjoy the service today. Shana Tova, and we'll begin in just a few moments. Talk amongst yourselves. Enjoy.
Shana Tova.
Shana Tova.
So we're all here, but we have to figure out if we've really gotten here or not. And that's okay. The adjustment to really arriving can take as much time as you need. And so this morning and throughout these days, we're going to invite into our consciousness, bring it forward, this notion that comes right out of the Torah, where the sages say that Moses and the elders were invited up to the top of the mountain that the text teaches, Ale Elai, come up to me, God says. But then there are these two other words that hang there, and they are Vehye Sham, and they mean and be there. And so one of our great sages, Rav Kook, explores this in his teachings, and he says, why do you need to be told again? If you're there, right? And of course, we all know it's so easy to be somewhere and not be there at all. So we're going to begin with the words Ale Elai Veyesham. Ale Elai, come up to me, Veyesham, and just be there. Be there existing. Just be there. And here's how it goes. Ale Elai, Ale Elai. Join us. Ale Elai, Ale
Shana Tova. It's our custom each morning of our High Holy Days to place our talit on our shoulders together as a community and to say that blessing together as a way to mark what this talis means if you choose to wear one. The idea is that these fringes on our talis are supposed to remind us about the values of what it means to be part of the Jewish people, the obligations, the laws, the virtues. And in our Torah, the command to wear the talis first appeared when someone accidentally forgot what it meant to live a virtuous life. And so God commands us to wear this as a kind of mnemonic, as a literal string around the finger to tell us how we should live. Well, in a way, the High Holy Days themselves serve as that mnemonic for 10 straight days. And just as you feel the talis on your shoulders and you feel the weight of what this tradition means, so too each of those days from Rosh Hashanah to Yom Kippur are meant to be that mnemonic as well, coaxing you and asking you, am I living the best life that I can be? Am I the most virtuous? Am I the most open? Am I the most responsible? Am I the most loving? And so together we're going to place our talis on our shoulders if you want to wear, And if not, we have a special reading for you as well. And in a moment, I'm going to ask us to rise. But before I do, I want to say a note, which is be kind to yourself. For some of us, it's easy to stand up. And to do so is a sign of respect to our prayers and to God. For others, the most respectful thing you can do is to be kind to your body and to not rise when others rise. Know your own limits, and more importantly, feel comfortable in your decision whether you stand or not. And so together, if you are able, I'll invite you to rise, page 106. And after we hear the words, Barchi Nafshi, we'll place our talis on our shoulders.
Barchi nafshi et ya Elohai, gedalta me'od. Feel free to join us. Barchi nafshi et ya Elohai, gedalta me'od. Hod v'hadar, hod v'hadar, labashta, labashta. Hod v'hadar, labashta. Hod v'hadar, labashta. Hod v'hadar, labashta. One more time, Barchi. Barchi nafshi, nafshi et ya Elohai, gadalta me'od, gadalta me'od. Barchi nafshi, nafshi et ya Elohai, gadalta me'od.
Together in English in the middle of that page. Unnameable God, I summon all my strength to praise. You are fathomless, yet close to me. Clothed in splendor, wrapped in light like a cloak, you stretch out the sky, celestial tent. Together, Baruch Atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitsharu u'mitzvotav v'tzivanu l'hitatev b'tzitzit. And we read the bottom blessing as well. Source of blessings, eternal our God, majestic in power. Your splendor reveals the way to holiness. Your light wraps us in the beauty of this sacred day. We can be seated, page number 10. 110, Page 123. Precious above is all the soul within me, a spark of childhood innocence, curious, hopeful, loving, and good. Whatever I've done, wherever I've gone wrong, however I've been hurt, I know its light still shines. May I return and reconnect with a part of me that belongs to you, my divine core, eternal, incorruptible. On the facing page, we join together.
Elohai, Elohai, Nishama, Shenatata bi tehorai. Join us, everybody. Elohai, Elohai, Nishama, Shenatata bi tehorai. Ata virata, ata yitzarta, ata nefachta bi. Ve'ata v'nishamra, nishamra v'kiri. Elohai.
Elohai, Elohai, Neshama, Shenatata bi Ata v'tzarta, ata nefachta bi. Ve'ata neshamra, neshamra v'kiri. Elohai, Elohai, Neshama, Shenatata bi
ברוך אתה אדוני אשר בידו נפש כל חי ורוח כל בשר איש.
Page 124, we join in a series of prayers which are meant to remind us of the miracles of daily life, those things that we often take for granted. The ability to distinguish day from night, to stand firm, to open our eyes, all with the goal of being a little bit more mindful of those miracles around us. Page 124.
ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם. Your great power gave the mind discernment to distinguish light from darkness.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Your great power opens eyes that cannot see.
Amen. Baruch אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם. Your great power brings freedom to the captive.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Your great power lifts up the fallen.
Amen. Baruch אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם. Your great power spreads the land upon the waters.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Your great power has made all I need.
Amen. Baruch אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם. Your great power gives firmness to our steps.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Your great power clothes the naked.
Amen. Baruch אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם. Your great power gives strength to the weary.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Your great power removes sleep from the eyes, slumber from the eyelids.
Amen. Baruch אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם. Your great power made me in the image of God.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Your great power endowed me with human freedom.
Amen. Baruch אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם. Your great power has made me Yisrael.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Your great power gives strength to Yisrael.
Amen.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Your great power crowns Israel with glory.
Page 130. We read responsively. Blessed is the one who spoke the world into being. Praised is God.
Praise to the one who is ever creating.
Praise the one who creates with a word.
Praise to the one whose vision is made real.
Praise the one who loves the earth.
Praise to the one who loves earth's creatures.
Praise the one whose worshipers know goodness.
Praise to the one who rescues.
Praise the one who rescues and sets free. Blessed is your name.
Our sovereign, we praise you with songs of celebration. Your oneness is the life of the cosmos.
Baruch atah Adonai melech mehulal batishbachot.
Middle of the facing page. God is my light and my refuge secure. Whom shall I fear? God is a stronghold of my life. Of whom shall I be afraid? Just one thing I have asked of God, only this do I seek, to dwell in God's house all the days of my life, to behold divine sweetness and beauty, and to gaze in delight at God's temple.
Adonai ori vishi mimi ira. Adonai ori vishi mimi ira. Adonai mos chayai mimi echad. Adonai ori.
Together.
Adonai
Ori vishi mimi ira.
Adonai ori vishi mimi ira. Adonai
Maos
mos
chayai
mimi
echad. Adonai
ori. Adonai ori. Ori vishi mimi ira. Mimi ira.
Let's hear you.
Adonai ori vishi
Mimi
ira. Mimi ira. Adonai ori vishi mimi ira. Adonai maos chayai mimi echad. Adonai ori.
Page 135.
Hallelujah, v'kodsha, hallelujah, birkiya uzo, hallelujah, v'gevurotu, hallelujah, kerotula, hallelujah, v'kodsha, hallelujah, birkiya uzo, hallelujah, v'gevurotu, hallelujah, kerotula. Hallelujah, בקח שופר, הללויה, בנבל וכינור, הללויה, בצור ותלך תבואה. כל תשובה תהללויה, הללויה.
Three times each Rosh Hashanah morning, we're supposed to sound the shofar. And in doing so, it's supposed to be a wake-up call for our souls, saying to us, are we living that life that we so seek? And so we turn to page 136, and if you feel physically able, I'll invite you to rise as we join in a responsive reading, and then we hear the first sounding of those three different times of shofar. Blessed are we, blessed our gathering as we open our hearts to the voice of the shofar. Together?
Happy are we who hear its calls return, sacred trumpet of Shofar.
Blessed are we, held close by an ancient sound that echoes Ledor Vador from generation to generation.
Happy are we rising to the joyful cry of a new year.
Blessed are we who hear in these blasts of sound the voice of community.
Happy are we who know its embrace, its season of celebration, its quest for connection and purpose.
Holy is this gift of community. Blessed the act of belonging.
Tekiah, Shvarim Teruah, Tekiah.
Blessed is the soul-reaching sound of the shofar. It proclaims the purpose of this day. Blessed is community, source of joy, solace, and strength to every living soul. We remain standing, page 141.
יתגדל ויתקדש מרבה. אדמה דברך אלוהי בימליך מלכותי בחייכון וביומכון ובחיי כל בית ישראל. בגדלה ובזמן קריב יאמרו יהי שמי רבה מבורך לעולם ולעולמי עלמיה. יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר מה ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי קודשה ולעילא ולעילא מכל ברכתה ושירתה. תושבחתה ונעלתה אוריה ירידה וימרו. ברכו את אדוני המבורך. אדוני המבורך לעולם ועד.
Please be seated.
Source of being, our eternal God, your power fills the cosmos, shaping light, creating darkness, making peace and fashioning all things. Infinite light is preserved in life's treasured house. Lights from the darkness, said God, and it was so.
ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהי מלך העולם יוצר אור ובורא חושך עושה שלום ובורא את הכל. ברוך
אתה אדוני אלוהינו,
ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהי ברוך אתה אדוני shalom uvore. Ose shalom.
Ose shalom uvore.
Ose shalom.
Ose shalom uvore.
Betachon.
Page 144.
In love you bring light to the earth and its creatures. Your goodness renews the creation each day. Infinite, varied, and rich as your works, divine artist, all of them wrought with wisdom. The whole earth is teeming with light. Awe-struck by the universe, work of your hands, let all bless you, praise you, and celebrate the beauty of your lights. May you shine a new light on Zion, and may we soon be privileged to share in that light. Our praise to you, Adonai, creator of cosmic light.
Baruch atah Adonai, yotzer hameorot.
Page 146.
So we have many, many names for divine. I liked divine artist. That was cool. Many names for God, many names for godness, including that's not the name that responds to me or that I respond to. But for sure we've got this notion, and as Jews we're uncomfortable with this, which is funny, that God is love. We think that that's someone else's tradition. It's not. It's right here. This next text, that's exactly what it says. Not only is God love, but we are loved through really no merit of our own, and it's unending, and all we need to do is figure out how to tap into it and share it. That is what it means to really walk God's path. And so we'll take a few moments and we'll meditate on this ahavaness, this godness that is love. And all you have to do is repeat right after me. Ahava, ahava,
Ahava,
ahava rabba.
Ahava,
All life springs from a single fountainhead. Listen, Israel, know the oneness at the heart of multiplicity. With love and reverence, bear witness to Makor Ha'ayim.
Baruch atah Adonai, habocher be'amo Yisrael be'ahava.
Page 152.
ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודך, והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבבך, ושיננתם לבניך, ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ושוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם לאות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך, למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם אלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם. We turn together to the bottom of page 163.
Please join me in reading responsively. Remember the stories of our slavery.
And you will never stop working for freedom.
Remember their fear at the edge of the sea.
And self-doubt will never defeat you.
Remember when desperation turned to celebration.
And you will never let go of hope.
Remember the words of the Baal Shem Tov.
Forgetfulness leads to exile. Remembrance is the secret of redemption. Page 164.
שיבחו גאולים לשמך על שפת הים, יחד כולם הודו והמליכו ואמרו אדוני לעולם.
Once again, if you're able, I'll invite you to rise.
צור ישראל קומה בעזרת ישראל, ופדינו ממך יהודה וישראל. גואלנו אדוני צבאות שמו, קדוש ישראל ברוך את אדוני גיא ישראל. אדוני שפתי תפתח ופי יגיד תהילתך.
Adonai sefatai tiftach ufi yagid tehilatecha.
ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו ואלוהי אבותינו ואימותינו, אלוהי אברהם, אלוהי יצחק ואלוהי יעקב, אלוהי שרה, אלוהי רבקה, אלוהי רחל ואלוהי לאה, האל הגדול הגיבור והנורא, אל עליון, גומל חסדים טובים וקונה הכל, וזוכר חסדי אבות ואימהות, מושיע ומגן, ברוך אתה אדוני, מגן אברהם ועזרת שרה. אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני, מחיי מתים אתה רב להושיע, מוריד הדר. מחכה לחיים בחסד, מחכה ביתי ברחמים רבים, סופר נופלים ורופא חולים, ומתיר עשויים, ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר. מחמורי גבורות ומידות אליו, מלך ממית ומחיה ומצמיח ישועה. מי כמוך אל הרחמים, זוכר יצוריו לחיים ברחמים. ונאמן אתה להחיות מתים, ברוך אתה אדוני מחיי המתים.
We're seated together, page 174. In a moment, we're going to hear one of the most haunting melodies and most theologically complicated prayers in our prayer book. And as you do, and you hear those words that tell you that God judges you and counts you, that God decides which book you're going to be in, the book of life or the book of death, and what your fate will be for the next year, I want to invite you to see them as the metaphor that you need them to be. That if much of the High Holy Days is meant to rouse your soul, to wake you up, then sometimes even the most shocking of images are needed to move you from your slumber. It's hard to get an object moving, and sometimes it needs that little extra push. And these next few prayers are that extra push.
ותפתח את ספר חפזון וכילאו רעדי יוחזון ויאמרו הנה הנה יום הדין לפקוד על צבא מרום תוודין כי לא יזכו פניך בדין בדין וכל באי לעולם ירירון לפניך כבני מרום
Page 178.
בראש השנה יכתבון וביום צום כיפור יחתבון בראש השנה יכתבון וביום צום כיפור יחתבון
On Rosh Hashanah, we plunge like swimmers into a sea of words. On Yom Kippur, the sea rises, then crests, and we emerge, sealed by the wax, warmed by the fire of braided candle. The new year is like a trailhead, opening wide before us. The day of fasting, narrow, breathless, so quick to close. We contemplate a new year, and this we know. Some of us will live, and some of us will die. Some will die young, and some very old. Some by water, and some by fire. Some by sword, and some by beast. Some by hunger, and some by thirst. Some by plague, and some by earthquake. Some by stoning, and some by strangling. Some of us will feel at ease, some will be restless. Some will have peace of mind, some will have strife. Some will be tranquil, some will be tormented. Some will be raised high, some will be brought low. Some will have riches, some will be impoverished. Even so, the way we act, the way we speak, the way we meet God's image in ourselves and in others, these things have great power to make our lives matter. Therefore, let us make whole the broken shards, green and thick the withering grass. Let the wind fill us with urgency for life. Let dreams give birth to justice and goodness. God of holiness, God of hope, let us glimpse your truth as we attach our hope to yours.
Page 180. Page 182.
We who are mortal, our origin is dust, and so is our end. We wear out lives to get our bread, like broken vessels, like withered grass, like a flower that must fade, a shadow moving on, a cloud passing by, mere dust on the wind, a dream that flies away. But for you, ever-living sovereign, time has no limits. Your presence, unbounded by days and years, is everywhere, a glorious mystery none can decipher. Your name is worthy of you, and you are worthy of your name, and our name you have linked with yours.
If you're able, we'll invite you to rise, page 184.
נקדש, נקדש את שמך בעולם, נקדש את שמך בעולם, כשם שמקדישים אותו בשמי מרום. ככתוב על יד נביאיך, וכרזה אל זה ואמר, קדוש, 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 אדוני צבאות, הארץ אדיר, אדירנו, אדיר, אדירנו, אדוני, אדוני, אדוננו, מדיר, מדיר, שמך בכל הארץ. אחד הוא אלוהינו, הוא אבינו, הוא מלכנו, הוא מושיענו, והוא ישמיענו, והוא ישמיענו, והוא ישמיענו, ורחמיו לעיני כל חיי אני אדוני אלוהיכם. אמור אדוני לעולם, אלוהי בציון, לדור ודור, הללויה. לדור ודור, לדור ודור,
Page 187.
We pray responsively. Holy is the dignity that is human, sacred the mystery we call divine.
Holy is the sacrifice made for those we love, precious the pains they take for us.
Sublime the glory of the heavens above us, sacred the beauty that glows within us.
Noble is the mind in searching of meaning, the heart is happy that finds its way.
Awesome is the power that rules our being, holy the kinship that makes us one.
Page 192.
You are holy, your name is awe, there is nothing divine beyond you. As the prophet Isaiah taught, the source of all might is exalted through justice, the God of holiness made holy through righteousness.
חרוץ במשפט. האל הקדוש נגרש בצדקו. ברוך אתה אדוני.
וברוך שמו.
We can be seated, page 200.
Please join me in reading responsibly. We are stiff-necked and stubborn. Teach us to bend before you.
Convinced we're right, entrenched in our own perspective, we resist your call to repent.
Convinced we're self-sufficient, entrenched in the illusion of control, we resist your call to humility.
Convinced we have it all, entrenched in the dream of mastering the world, we resist your call to wake up.
Today you summon us out of our arrogance, out of rigidity, fantasy, shallowness, self-deception.
Teach us to bend our knees, to bow our heads before the mystery, to realize our frailty with fortitude.
Teach us to make you Melech, sovereign in our life, to align ourselves with your goodness and truth.
We may not bow before Pharaoh. We will not bow before the Persian lord. We would not submit to any power on earth or give ourselves to any material thing. But we, the Jewish people, are stiff-necked, stubborn to the end. Today we bow before you. In a moment, we're going to turn to page 202. And it's customary in reciting, it's called the Great Aleinu, that if you want, it is the one time during the high holidays, during the year when we recite this prayer, instead of bowing our heads slightly, to go all the way down in full prostration. And so if you want to try, I'll invite you to make your way to the aisles. And the idea of submission, the idea of fully humbling yourself, can actually be a really powerful moment in the High Holy Days. And so if that's something you want to try, I'll invite you when we rise together to make your way over toward the aisles. We rise together, if you're able, page 202.
עלינו לשבח לדון הכל לתת כנונו להוציא בראשית שלא עשנו כגויי הארצות ולא שמענו כמשפחות האדמה שלא סלחנו כהם וגורלנו ככל המונו ואנחנו
Please be seated.
Please join me again in reading responsibly on page 203. Awake, you sleepers, from your sleep. Rouse yourselves from your slumber. Awake, like Israel at the sea, to the joyful song of Miriam and Moses.
Sing to the Eternal, for God has surged in triumph. The Eternal shall reign forever and ever.
Awake, like Israel at Sinai, to the dignity of being God's partners.
You shall be for me a holy nation, a sovereign community of priests.
Examine your deeds and return to God. Remember your Creator, you who are caught up in the daily routine, losing sight of eternal truth. You who waste your years in vain pursuits that neither profit nor save. Hear the rousing call to repentance.
With trumpets and blasts of shofar, raise a shout before the eternal Messiah.
Hear and know the truth of a higher power.
God is sovereign, robed in majesty. God is clothed with strength, so the world stands firm and cannot be shaken.
Return to God by pursuing justice and right.
Majestic one who loves justice, you who established equity, you worked righteous judgment for Jacob.
Look to your souls, improve your ways and your deeds. Let each of you abandon your evil ways, forsake your unworthy schemes. Arise and see the glory of all being. Open yourselves to the light of God.
Awake, awake, O Zion, clothe yourself in splendor, put on your robes of majesty.
Listen well, in silence and stillness is the voice of God.
It was a great and mighty wind, splitting mountains and shattering rocks, but the Eternal was not in the wind. After the wind, an earthquake, but the Eternal was not in the earthquake. After the earthquake, fire, but the Eternal was not in the fire. And after the fire, a soft murmuring sound.
Through worthy deeds, bring near the day of unity and goodness, a glimpse of perfection.
Adonai shall reign over all the earth. On that day, God shall be one, and God's name shall be one. Listen, Israel. Adonai is our God. Adonai is one. And once again, if you're able, I'll invite you to rise, page 206.
קדישנו במצוותיו, וציוונו לשמוע קול שופר. ברוך אתה, אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, שהחיינו
וקיימנו והגיענו לזמן הזה.
תקיעה, שברים תרועה, תקיעה, תקיעה, שברים, תקיעה, תקיעה, תרועה, תקיעה.
Please be seated.
הרשת שפתנו ירע לפניך, ירע רע ונישא. הרשת שפתנו ירע לפניך, ירע רע ונישא. מבין ובציר, מביט ובקשיב, לכל תקיעתנו. קבל ברחמים, ברחמים וברצון, סליחה ומיודענו.
Hayom Harat Olam. Today the world is born anew. This day the world of creation stands before you to be judged. As we are your children, love us in the way of mothers and fathers. As we are yours in service, guide us by the light of your justice, grace, and holiness. I'll invite you to continue silently with your own personal prayer from page 208 through page 220. And when you're finished, you're already seated. Page 216. the most beautiful customs that we have here in our congregation is to bless one another during these high holy days. And so I want to invite us to take our prayer books and to leave them on our seats. And if you're able again, I want to invite you to rise. And if you feel comfortable, grab the hands of those near you. As together we offer this threefold blessing, the oldest blessing in our tradition, the priestly benediction, a 3,500-year-old blessing first penned by Aaron, Moses' brother. And we offer this to one another. Standing, page 224. Avinu Malkeinu, we stand in awe, we draw close in love. Avinu Malkeinu, the power that passes through us and pervades all things. Avinu Malkeinu, the divine that is present within and among us.
Avinu קולנו.
Together, we speak this sacred truth aloud.
אבינו מלכנו חטאנו לפניך.
We stand as one accountable for our sins.
אבינו מלכנו חמול עלינו ועל עוללינו ויטפנו.
We yearn for true compassion for our children and most of all.
אבינו מלכנו קל לדבר וחרב רב ועלינו.
May we resist the ravages of illness, fear, and despair.
אבינו מלכנו קל לכל צר ומסתיר מעלינו.
Let us summon courage to withstand our enemies.
אבינו מלכנו כותבנו בספר חיים טובים.
Let the goodness of this gift of life be engraved upon our hearts.
אבינו מלכנו חדש עלינו שנה טובה.
May we taste anew the sweetness of each day.
אבינו מלכנו מלא ידינו מברכותיך.
Let us wake up to the blessing already in our grasp.
אבינו מלכנו חוננו ועננו כי אין בנו מעשים עשה עמנו צדקה וחסד והושיענו.
However small our deeds, let us see their power to heal. May we save lives through compassion,
generosity, and justice.
אבינו מלכנו חוננו ועננו. אבינו מלכנו חוננו ועננו כי אין לנו מעשים עשה עמנו צדקה וחסד. עשה עמנו צדקה וחסד והושיענו. אבינו מלכנו עננו ועננו. אבינו מלכנו ועננו ועננו כי אין בנו
Page 226. We are the people of the book. Through fire and mud and dust we have borne our scrolls tenderly as a baby swaddled in a blanket, traveling with our words sewn in our clothes and carried on our backs. Let us take up the scroll of Torah and dance with it and touch it and read it out, for the mind touches the word and makes it light. So does light enter us, and we shine.
אין כמוך באלוהים אדוני, כי אין כמעשיך. מלכותך מלכות כל עולמים, וממשלתך בכל דור ודור. אדוני מלך, אדוני מלך, אדוני Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai
Echad Eloheinu, Gadol Adoneinu, Kadosh v'noro Shemo. Adelul Adonai iti, unerromevo Shemo Yachdav. Lecha Adonai ha'kidura, ve'akidura, ve'atiferet, ve'aretzach, ve'ahod. Ki kol hashamayim u'aretz, ki kol hashamayim u'aretz. Lay, 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 la, lay, lay, ya, ya, la, ya, lay, 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 la, lay, 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 ya, lay, 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 la, lay, ya, lay, 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 ya, lay, 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 la, lay, ya, lay, Shevet, that was good. You may be seated.
So before we read our Torah this morning, I want to call up the president of our congregation, Ken Cohen, to make a few remarks and to welcome everyone to services this morning.
Before I say a few words, I was just thinking, remember the commercial for a phone company that bragged about how great its cell service was? Can you hear me now? Well, can you hear me now? I know you can, because our new sound system, which was installed just in the past 2 weeks, will not only improve the sound quality in this room and the small sanctuary, and let us better hear the teachings of Rabbi Katz and the spirituality of Cantor Greenberg, but we also have new devices to allow those with difficulty hearing to be fully present in the service. And to literally meet people where they are, we now have live streaming for services and other programs and events in which people want to participate but can't make it to our building. I know of a few people in particular who are watching this service through the live stream right now, and for them, and to any others watching, thank you for being part of our community wherever you may be. This improvement was made possible by the extremely generous gift to Temple Ner Tamid by Wendy Grossman and Barbara Grossman to honor the memory of their parents, Max and Florence Grossman. Wendy told me about the love and commitment of her parents to this synagogue, and that as her mother grew older and found it difficult to hear, she wished that there would be a service where she could hear better and all of those can be more present, and I'm sure she would be very happy to know that she was able to make it so for all of us. So thank you very much. Contributions to this project were also made by Eileen Opatot and Joan Gary, and Leslie and Larry Greenberg, parents of Cantor Meredith Greenberg. And we thank them for their generosity as well. You'll all see outside on the table are the bags. We do this each year. Please take 1 or 2, or as many as you'd like, and fill them up with food and bring back the bags on Yom Kippur so that we can provide food through the Human Needs Food Pantry and the Community Food Bank of New Jersey to help those less fortunate than ourselves. So, on Rosh Hashanah morning, a woman goes in to her son's room to wake him up, to get dressed and go to temple, and he says in a groggy and somewhat cranky voice, "I'm not going." And she says, "What? Why not?" And he says, "Well, I'll give you 2 reasons. 1, they don't like me. And number 2, I'm not so sure I like them." And she replies, "Well, you're going, and I'll give you 2 good reasons why. Number 1, you're 64 years old. And number 2, you're the president of the temple." So I could laugh at a good temple president joke, there are plenty. But the truth is, it's really not all that accurate. As I start my 3rd and final year of this term as president of Temple Ner Tamid, I have been really surprised but truly moved by people who thank me regularly for doing this work. And I have come to know and come to get close to so many people that I had not known before and probably wouldn't have if not for the service. And the truth is, I've gotten so much more from Temple Ner Tamid than I feel that I've given. And that's why I want to reflect back some of what I've seen and experienced that makes Temple Ner Tamid a community for me and my family, and hopefully for all of you as well. A few weeks ago, Jody and I got a text from Lori Price Abrams, who along with Rick, Sonia, and Micah were in Boulder, Colorado. She texted a picture of all of them out to dinner with Tucker, our 24-year-old son who now lives in Boulder. Nothing had been prearranged, nothing was planned, but while they were in Colorado, they thought to call him and take him out to dinner. Why? Because for them, Temple Ner Tamid is like family. And seeing all of them beaming in that photograph, I understood that while there was nothing particularly Jewish about that moment, It was all about the community that we have formed at Temple Ner Tamid. It was so touching to us, and it was especially significant that Tucker felt so connected back to his community. As a boomer family going through aging parent issues, it can be hard. This past year, our family participated in a support group with others at Ner Tamid who are caring for parents and other relatives dealing with the challenges of aging. Again, that issue is certainly not unique to Jews, but it is another example of Temple Ner Tamid being a place where members are connecting with each other around supporting each other through difficult life circumstances. For me, knowing that Temple Ner Tamid created a place for my family and others to share openly and to lift each other up was mission accomplished. What has become clear to me over these last few years is that in 2019, to flourish and grow, synagogue cannot just be about Judaism in the sense of the ethnic religion of the Jewish people, an ancient monotheistic Abrahamic religion with Torah as its foundation and its foundational text. Of course, we pray and learn Torah and study sacred texts, but synagogue must be about more. It must be about people, about friendship and loneliness, about struggle and celebration, about all of the things that make a life. In some ways, our calendar revolves around Shabbat, but what happens between one Shabbat to the next is the time that we mostly live our lives. And to remain vital and relevant, a synagogue has to fill that time with meaning, and I believe that Temple Ner Tamid does just that. As we fulfill our mission to inspire our members to make our community more curious, connected, and just, and yes, I repeat that mantra as often as I can, we provide opportunities and participate together in activities that include prayer, meditation, music, movies, civic engagement, advocacy, education, and it's a shul, of course, eating. And these things happen because of our wonderful clergy and professional staff, and also because of the contributions and volunteerism of our members, something the rabbi will talk about during these high holidays. And if over the coming year and years to follow, we can engage even more members in this enterprise, we can be even more in the lives of our members and further inspire our larger community to join in the possibilities that we create. The high holidays come at the end of the month of Elul, which has become a time for reflection. And I saw many of you answering the questions on Facebook that were posed by the rabbi and the cantor. But an ancient practice was to sound the shofar each morning during the month of Elul. And to me, that is a call to awaken, to use all of our senses to be present and awake to all the possibilities around us. And like the bugle sounding reveille in the morning, the shofar blast tells us to get up and get going. Reflection is indeed an important first step, and then it is up to us collectively to take action to make this world whole. At this time of year, we say Shana Tova, which sometimes appears in translation as Happy New Year, but really translates to Good Year. Happy New Year seems a bit secular and almost like a throwaway line, at the very least, just something temporary. But being committed to actually having a good year is both longer lasting and completely up to us. So rather than simply wishing for a good year, let's all make it a good year. Shana Tova.
In a moment, we're going to prepare to read from our Torah, and we're going to be reading the portion for the first day of Rosh Hashanah, which is on page 238. And as he's done year after year, I want to call up Robert Rich, who's going to be our Gabbai for today, and calling up those who are reading our Torah and blessing our Torah.
Ya'amod Rishon Mariasha Bat Chaim Pesach ve'Esther. Ya'amod Rishon Lev Ben Yisrael ve'Hinda Rivka. Marge Grayson, Paul Grayson. Ta'amod Balat HaKriya. Rachel Bat Lev ve'Mariasha Jenny Grayson.
Baruch et Adonai Hamvara. Baruch Adonai Hamvara Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Asher bachar banu mikol hamim v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Vadonai pakad etzara kesher amar. Vayas Adonai l'sara kesher diber. Vatahar vatilet Sarah le'Avraham. Ben lizkunav lamoed. Asher diber Elohim. Vayikra Avraham et Shem beno hanolad lo asher yalda lo Sarah Yitzchak. Vayamal Avraham et Yitzchak beno ben shmonat yamim kesher tzivato Elohim.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Asher natan lanu Torah emet v'chayei olam nota b'tochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Ta'amod Sheni Zeva Bat Menachem Mendel V'Fremet Wendy Grossman. Ta'amod Balat HaKriya Yehudit Bat Yaakov Rachel Judy Anderson.
Baruch et Adonai Hamvara.
Baruch Adonai Habarach le'olam va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Hamvarach le'olam va'ed. Baruch Adonai. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim. V'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen.
Amen. V'Avraham ben Ma'at Shana B'hivaled lo et Yitzhak beno. V'atomer Sarah tzikuk asali Elohim kol hashomeya Yitzhak li. Vatomer mi milel l'Avraham heini kavanim shan Sarah ki alati vein liskunav vayigdal hayeled vayigamal vayas Avraham mishtek gadol biyom higamel et Yitzhak.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Asher natan lanu Torah emet v'chayei olam nata b'tochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Ramod Shlishi Yael Elizabeth Ruvain Ariel Jill Katz. Yamod Bal HaKriya Yeshua ben Levi Vatziva Josh Katz.
Baruch hu et Adonai Hamvorach.
Baruch Adonai Hamvorach Leolam Vaed.
Baruch Adonai Hamvorach Leolam Vaed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Wrong place. That's it, right? Good. Vatera Sarah et ben Hagar hamitzrit asher yalda leAvraham mitzachek vatomer lavraham garesh ha'ama hazot ve'et bena ki lo yerash ben hama'a hazot im beni im Yitzchak Yarea hadavar meod bnei Avraham al odot beno Vayomer Elohim el Avraham al yera ba'anecha al hanar v'al amatecha kol asher tomar elecha Sarah shema v'kula ki vayitzchak yikare lecha zara.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torat emet b'chayei olam nata b'tochenu. Baruch atah Adonai naten haTorah.
Amen. Yamod Revi'i Eliana bat Yehoshua v'Malka Ellen Madri Yamod Mahalakriya Asher Zelik ben Ruvain Eliezer of Miriam Kenkon.
Baruch hu et Adonai Hamavorach.
Baruch Adonai Hamavorach Leolam Vaed.
Baruch Adonai Hamavorach Leolam Vaed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. V'gamet ben ha'ama l'gayasimenu ki zarachahu v'yashkem Avraham b'boker v'yikach lechem v'cheimat mayim v'yitein el hagor sam al shichma v'yet hayeled v'shalcheha Vatelech vateta bamidbor bi'er shava vayichlu hamayim min hachemet vatashlech et hayelet tachat echad hasichim vatelech vateshev la mineged harchei kim tachavei keshet ki amra ala reba mot hayoled vateshev mineged vatisat kola vatev vayishma Elohim el kol anar vayikra malach Elohim el Hagar min hashamayim vayomer la malach Hagar al tiri ki shama Elohim el kol hanar ba'asher hu sham.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torat emet v'chayei olam nata b'tochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Ta'amod Chamishi Shira Shengdol Bat Ruvain Vikittel. Yamod Chamishi Moshe Ben Chaim Va'ava. Jody and Gary Rudorin. Ta'amod Balat HaKriya Chana Bet Yasef Ve'ida. Cheryl Gothelf.
Baruch et Adonai HaMevorach.
Baruch Adonai HaMevorach le'olam ha'ed.
Baruch Adonai HaMevorach le'olam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bachar banu mikol ha'amin, v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten ha'Torah. Amen. Kumi sei et anar, v'yahaziki et yedeach bo, ki l'goy gadol asimenu, v'yiskach Elohim et enecha, v'tere ber mayim, v'tele, v'timale et hachemet mayim, v'tashk et hanar. Vayhi Elohim et hanar vaydal vayeshev bemidbar vayhi rove kashar vayeshev bemidbar paran vansikach lo imo isha me'eretz Mitzrayim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu Torah emet, v'chayei olam nata b'tochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten ha'Torah.
So while our prayer book, yes, it's true, my prayer book is out as well, but I meant the Torah. While the Torah is still out, we take this next few moments to call upon this desire to share and send the lightness of healing to the people we love. And the tradition teaches us that as we draw closer to Torah, that somehow there is some psycho-spiritual something that happens to us that makes us that much more able and perhaps just makes it that much more available to us because of the symbolic kavod, glory, that Torah reminds us to live in our own lives. And so we're going to take a few moments to just breathe into the kindness of heart that we share for those who are ailing, who are struggling, and that may be you, and to just call upon those thoughts and those feelings in this moment with this breath, and acknowledge that if it was possible, what I would do in order to bring healing to those who most need it. And so keeping them close, we turn in our machzor to the middle of page 245, and at the center of this beloved melody, if it feels right to you, we'll offer names of those who are in need of healing.
May the source of strength, who bless the ones
courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. We think of these. I'd like to call up to the Bima Bruce and Susan Goldstein as we prepare for Hagba and Glila, the lifting and rolling of Torah. And once more, if you're able, we ask you to please rise. So take it off of here first. Off first, and now straight up. V'zot haTorah asher nesa Moshe livnei bnei Yisrael al pi Adonai aviyad Moshe yismechu hashamayim yismechu hashamayim yismechu hashamayim v'taker haaretz yiramaya 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 melo yiramaya ay ay ra 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 ay ra ra ya la 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 ay ra ra ya la 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 ya 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 Yiramaya, 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 Umelo. Now, Lashevet, you may be seated. And so may you. And so perfectly on cue, Sarah and Roger Siegel are coming up to the Bima because, of course, we have one more reading from that, from one of our Nevi'im for today. We begin on page 252, first with the bracha, but this is, of course, from the book of Samuel, as we've read for hundreds of years. Feels like hundreds of years. So please feel free to follow along in the text, and Sarah will begin with the opening bracha.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar b'nviim tovim v'ratza v'divreihem hanemarim be'emet. Baruch atah Adonai habocher b'Torah uv'Moshe avdo uv'Yisrael amo uv'inviei ha'emet v'tzedek.
And Hannah prayed, saying, "Through the eternal, my heart knows joy. Through the eternal, my horn is raised. My mouth opens wide against my foes, for I exult in your deliverance. There is nothing holy like the eternal, for there is nothing beside you, and there is no rock like our God. Speak no more in lofty tones. Let arrogance leave your mouths. All-knowing is the eternal God, whose deeds cannot be measured. The bows of the mighty are broken, while those who falter find strength. Those who were full sell themselves for bread, and the hungry hunger no more. The one who was barren bears 7, and the mother of many is bereaved. The Eternal is the maker of death and life, takes down to Sheol and brings back up. The Eternal makes poverty and wealth, casts low and raises aloft, lifts the poor from the dust, causes the needy to rise from dung heaps and dwell among the princes, and then places them on thrones of honor. For the pillars of the earth belong to the Eternal, who founded the world upon them, who watches over the steps of the faithful while turning evildoers silent in the darkness. For not by power shall a human being prevail. The Eternal shatters foes, thunders against them in the heavens. The Eternal judges the earth from end to end. So may God give strength to the sovereign and raise high the horn of God's anointed.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam tzur kol olamim tzadik bechol hadorot ha'el ha'ne'eman ha'omer ve'oseh ha'mdaber u'mkayem shekol devarav emet v'tzedek al ha'torah ve'al ha'avodah ve'al ha'nvim ve'al yom hazikaron hazeh shenatata lanu Adonai Eloheinu lechavod ultifaret al hakol Adonai Eloheinu anachnu modim lach umvarchim otach yitbarach shimcha befi kol chai tamid leolam vaed udvarcha emet v'kayam la'ad baruch atah Adonai melech hakol haaretz mekadesh Yisrael V'yom hazikaron.
So we're on page 264. The divine awakens within us a sudden awareness of your presence. Seeing signs of your compassion, we say, God, remember. Together?
God remembered Noah and all the beasts that were with him in the ark. And God caused the wind to blow across the earth, and the waters subsided.
When cruelty and hate diminish, we say, God remembered.
The Israelites were groaning under the bondage and cried out. God heard their moaning, and God remembered the covenant with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob.
Surprised by joy, we say, God remembered.
Then God remembered Rachel, and God gave heed to her and opened her womb.
Overcoming anger, finding strength to forgive, we say, God remembered.
God remembered the covenant and great love had changed our heart.
The divine awakens within us a sudden awareness of your presence. When we feel our kinship with all creatures of earth, we say, God remember.
I will remember my covenant between me and you and all the creatures.
When we long to be forgiven, we say, God remember.
Adonai, remember your compassion and your faithfulness. They are old as time. Remember not the wrongs of my youth and my defiance.
The divine awakens within us a sudden awareness of your presence. Overcome by awe in places of grandeur, we say, God remembers.
God sustains reverent. God remembers the covenant forever.
When the memories of the Exodus are renewed, we say, God remembers.
Thus said Adonai, remember the devotion of your youth, your love as a bride, how you followed me in the wilderness, the land unknown.
The divine awakens within us a sudden awareness of your presence. Even when sorrow is in our heart, we say, God will remember.
Truly, Ephraim is my precious child, my delight, and though I speak against
When we remember who we are, we say, God will remember.
I will remember for their sake the covenant of the ancients, whom I freed from the land of Egypt, to incite the nations to be to fear their God. I, Adonai.
We're on page 267. God of remembrance, remember the covenant of our ancestors. We reaffirm it today. Remember, we are a people of noble ideals. Help us attain them. Remember all your people, all the nations on the road to peace. Bless their efforts. Remember with mercy the binding of Isaac, the sorrow of Sarah, Abraham's words, here I am. Our memory fades, but you remember all that we have forgotten. Your presence is a throne where all things matter and nothing is lost. Together, Baruch atah Adonai.
Zocher haberit.
Together, you remember the covenant.
You remember us.
We're going to rise together, and we're going to invite all of our kids who are in our child care to come right forward to the front, because they are going to help me to make the calls for the shofar.
Come on down.
Come on down.
Are they there, but we just can't see them? Oh, okay.
Come on down. Come sit right here, guys. I'm going to say, and then you're going to yell after him, okay? Tekiah. Shvarim Trua. Tekiah. Shvarim. Tekiah. Nice and loud. Tekiah. Trua. Please be seated.
Kol hakavod. Areshet evatenu yerav lifanecha ram benisa. Areshet evatenu yerav lifanecha ram benisa. Meviru mazid, mavitu makshir, lekor tekihateinu, kabel berachamim ratzon, seder zichronoteinu.
Hayom Harat Olam. Today the world is born anew. This day the whole of creation stands before you to be judged. As we are your children, love us in the way of mothers and fathers. As we are yours in service, guide us by the light of your justice, grace, and holiness. We're going to turn together to page 272 as first a prayer for our country and then a prayer for Israel.
That is a tough act to follow.
Yeah. And we can rise.
God of holiness, we hear your message. Justice, justice you shall pursue. God of freedom, we hear your charge. Proclaim liberty throughout the land. Inspire us through your teachings and commandments to love and uphold our precious democracy. Let every citizen take responsibility for the rights and freedoms we cherish. Let each of us be an advocate for justice, an activist for liberty, a defender of dignity, and let us champion the values that make our nation a haven for the persecuted, a beacon of hope among the nations. May our actions reflect compassion for all people within our borders and abroad. May our leaders and officials embody the vision of our founders to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and on our posterity. We pray for courage and conscience as we aim to support our country's highest values and aspirations, the hard-won rights that define us as a people, the responsibilities that they should entail. We pray for all who serve our country with selfless devotion in peace and in war, from fields of battle to clinics and classrooms, from government to the grassroots, all those whose noble deeds and sacrifice benefit our nation and our world. We are grateful for the rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness that our founders ascribed to you, our Creator. We pray for their wisdom and moral strength, that we may be guardians of these rights for ourselves and for the sake of all people, now and forever.
Amen.
Avinu, Avinu, Shebashamayim,
Page 274.
Tzur Yisrael v'galo. Avinu, Avinu, Shebashamayim, Tzur Yisrael v'galo.
You who are high above all nations, states, and peoples, Rock of Israel, the one who saved us and preserved us in life, bless the state of Israel, first flowering of our redemption. Be her loving shield, a shelter of lasting peace. Guide her leaders and advisors by your light of truth. Instruct them with your good counsel. Strengthen the hands of those who would build and protect our holy land. Deliver them from danger. Crown their efforts with success. Grant peace to the land, lasting joy to all of her people, and together we say, Amen.
And we're going to prepare to return our Torah to the Ark, page 276.
יחללו את שם אדוני כי נשגב שמו לבדו.
Precious teaching I have given you, my Torah, do not forsake it. A tree of life to those who hold it fast. All who embrace it know happiness. Its ways are ways of pleasantness, and all its paths are peace. Take us back, Adonai. Let us come back to you. Renew in our time the days of old.
Hashivenu, Hashivenu, Adonai Elecha, v'nashuva, v'nashuva.
be seated. Shana Tova. When I was a child, my family was part of a community of boaters. Each summer, we'd set out on our twin-engine 34-foot bayliner to local spots near our port in Barrington, Rhode Island. Newport, Block Island, Martha's Vineyard. On one blustery day, we were headed home with a few other boats who had all vacationed together to one of these places. These fellow travelers were our friends. Together, we'd share barbecues and beach outings. They were from a diversity of towns, backgrounds, and socioeconomic classes. Most were Catholic, Rhode Island being the most Catholic state in the United States. Our boat happened to be the first into the dock, since our marina was too narrow to accommodate more than one boat docking into their slip. And one of my parents' friends had to wait for us to finish before he could dock. Now, his boat was pushed around a bit in the wind, since keeping a boat steady is basically impossible on a windy day when waiting in a queue. And eventually he did dock after nearly banging into another boat nearby. When people asked him about it, he turned to my dad and said jokingly, "I would have been fine, but that Jew boy beat me home." My dad pretended to play along with the joke, smiling and sticking out his tongue at his friend, before everyone went to their respective vessels to have lunch. Over sandwiches, I remember my dad getting quiet. "These are our friends," he said. "But remember, as much as you don't want to admit it, you'll always be Jewish to them." For years, I shrugged off that wisdom. I am young enough to have grown up in an era of calm for American Jewry, where it seemed to me that anti-Semitism was over. I remember railing against the emphasis on the Holocaust in our education, proclaiming as a strident teenager that we lived in a, quote, post-Holocaust age. But I also remember opening the door to anti-Semitism during locker room banter with a self-deprecating joke about my Jewishness, and reaping the fruit of months of other kids crossing that line with their own jokes and observations about Judaism. At that time, I thought that it was my fault that I led them down that path, rather than blaming a society that taught kids that it was okay to talk like that. Today, there's little question that anti-Semitism is back in our consciousness, but there's also little question that it never went away. We don't live in an era of renewed anti-Semitism. Rather, we live in an era where it's simply more visible, more violent, and more present today. Anti-Semitism does not go away. That's why it's called the, quote, oldest hatred. What changes instead is the way in which it's manifest. As for us today, part of the challenge of anti-Semitism is that I truly believe never in history has the mechanisms for anti-Semitism been as diverse and as confusing as they are right now. Each era of history tended to have only one identified way that people attacked their fellow Jews. Early on, the criticisms of Jews was ideological. Jews didn't accept Jesus and they were persecuted for it. They resisted converting to Islam at the time of Muhammad, and though they were a tolerated minority in the Muslim tradition, they were relegated to second-class citizens in many of the areas they settled in the Middle Ages. Soon the hatred turned from speaking about what Jews believed to what they did. Jews were persecuted for killing Jesus. During the medieval era, blood libels arose, claiming falsely that Jews killed children to put their blood into their matzah, or they reconstituted Jesus from the host bread in order to torture him. In this era and subsequently, Jews became a symbol for everything that people didn't like. That's why Jews could be called disparagingly socialists and capitalists at different eras in history. Judaism does not change, but people's fears and stigmas do. Socialists hated capitalists, and thus Jews were called capitalists. Capitalists hated socialists, so Jews took on that label. Eventually, Jew hatred turned officially to anti-Semitism in the late 19th century, when anti-Semitism became a racial designation. During this era, the problem was no longer what we believed or even what we were accused of doing. Instead, anti-Semitism became about who we were. Anti-Semitism became a political designation, a badge of honor for those who sought our people's destruction. As German propaganda minister Paul Joseph Goebbels proudly remarked after Kristallnacht, quote, "The German people is anti-Semitic. It has no desire to have its rights restricted or to be provoked in the future by the parasites of the Jewish race." As Jews moved through each stage of history, the anti-Semitism they faced did not go away. Instead, it stuck around, moving up through history, so that today's anti-Semitism is very different from anything that we have seen in the past. Because even with new layers that are fundamentally modern, it retains many of these old forms, making anti-Semitism today less a fundamental system of belief and more a wide array of loosely related beliefs and prejudices, sharing little but the hatred of Jews. Today, I want to talk about 4 ways that anti-Semitism is manifest in our society today. And after diagnosing the problem, talk about how they each need their own tailor-made solutions. We all feel acutely the first of our categories of anti-Semitism, which is also the easiest to grasp. We live in a world of uncovered white supremacy. Uncovered because it was always there, but in the past few years, these forces of hatred and bigotry seem more out in the open. They are the marchers in Charlottesville, the shooters in Pittsburgh and Poway. They are the swastikas painted on playground equipment, slurs etched in synagogue walls. Last year, Jews faced a staggering 1,879 attacks against Jews and Jewish institutions across our country. In fact, 2 of the 3 highest incidents of hate crimes against Jews in the history of the Anti-Defamation League's statistics occurred in the past 2 years, beaten only by 1994. And New Jersey is not immune. We have the 3rd highest rate of anti-Semitic incidents of any state, behind New York and California. I've often been asked why white supremacists choose to target Jews at such high rates, especially since their hatred isn't limited to Jews, but rather also targeted toward blacks, Latinos, Muslims, and members of the LGBTQ community. In his groundbreaking essay, Skin in the Game, Eric Ward, executive director of the Western States Center, explained why Jews are targeted especially by white supremacists. In an extended quote, he writes, the success of the civil rights movement created a terrible problem for white supremacist ideology. White supremacism, inscribed de jure by the Jim Crow regime and upheld de facto outside the South, had been the law of the land, and a black-led social movement had toppled the political regime that supported it. How could a race of supposed inferiors have unseated this power structure through organizing alone? For that matter, how could feminists and LGBTQ people have upended traditional gender relations? Leftists mounted a challenge to global capitalism. Muslims won billions of converts to Islam. How do you explain the boundary-setting allure of hip-hop, the election of a black president? Some secret cabal, some mythological power must be manipulating the social order behind the scenes. This diabolical evil must control television, banking, entertainment, education, and even Washington, D.C. It must be brainwashing white people, rendering them racially unconscious. End of quote. This quote, diabolical evil, says a white supremacist, is the Jewish community. Wrapped in the anti-Semitic tropes of old, they believe that we are the conspirators, the secret powers. Pulling the strings behind the scenes, we are responsible for the rise of all things hated by white supremacy. multiculturalism, pluralism, globalism. I've said this before, but when those people who were marching in Charlottesville called "the Jews will not replace us," they weren't afraid that we would become the new power, but that we already were, and that we were scheming to bring in immigrants and bolster minorities to push the white nation aside. This hatred needs its own approach, and I'll come back to what to do about it shortly. The second kind of anti-Semitism that we see appears on the far left. The white supremacy and anti-Semitism on the far left share the same designation of anti-Semitism. They manifest it in totally different ways. For those on college campuses and in leftist circles, this anti-Semitism appears through the lens of anti-Israel and anti-Zionist rhetoric. Now, don't get me wrong. One can certainly be critical of Israel without being an anti-Semite, and the line between anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism is really blurry. They're not the same thing, which is what makes this particular kind of anti-Semitism so confusing. Over the course of the next few months, I want to continue using our Israel speaker series on Sunday mornings to explore this tension, but for now, a few brief observations. As I've mentioned, much of anti-Semitism that we see today has the same basic themes that echo throughout time. 1, Jews have hidden power and influence that they don't deserve. 2, a Jewish person's right to tell their historical story matters less than those of other minorities. 3, others have more of a right to define who Jews are, for example, a religion, an ethnic group, or a nation, than Jews do themselves. 4, one can hold the whole Jewish community responsible for the acts of a subgroup of Jews. Today, we see each one of these manifest in the popular discourse on Israel. When someone gives undue power and shadow influence to AIPAC, saying that they pull the strings of Washington far beyond what is most effective of a lobbying organization, that crosses a line to anti-Semitism. When Palestinian narratives are held up, but Jewish narratives are ignored. When Jews are told that they have no true historical tie to the Temple Mount in Jerusalem. When groups use our communal traumas against us, specifically calling us Nazis or saying that we commit genocide. When people deny our right to call ourselves a Jewish nation, explaining to us that as a religion we don't deserve a homeland. When Jewish teens who have never been to Israel before are told by their professors to answer for the problems in Israeli society. All of these cases are actually those old tropes anew. And unfortunately for our young people, it's hard to know how to answer when they are told that these criticisms are simply against Israel, rather than wrapped in a culture and a climate of subtle anti-Semitic discourse. Like white supremacy, these behaviors need a response of their own, but the response must be different in each case. The third way that anti-Semitism is manifest is very problematic, but it's often something that we don't talk about. We are living through a spate of some of the worst violence against ultra-Orthodox Jews in Brooklyn and Queens than perhaps any other time in our country's history. In 1 week in early September, for example, 4 specific acts of violence were perpetrated against the community, including one act when Rabbi Abraham Gopkin, age 64, was attacked with a brick in Brooklyn Crown Heights neighborhood. Delving into the racial and economic tensions between these communities who live in places like Crown Heights that has led to this level of violence is outside the scope of this sermon. But it's something we should acknowledge and eventually talk about. But that is no excuse for the violence that we see. Anti-Semitism anywhere breeds anti-Semitism everywhere. Though these Jewish communities may feel like a world away, they are in fact not. When, for example, elected officials work in North Jersey to keep certain ultra-Orthodox communities from moving to their town, likening them to, quote, vermin, and speaking of them as if they are a, quote, infestation, they perpetuate the same images and languages that plague the Jewish people throughout history. when we say nothing in the face of this hatred. We allow these officials to become practiced in speaking and acting this way, laying the groundwork for a culture where it becomes acceptable to hate members of the Jewish community. Finally, we have to talk about the truth in the witty retort by Franklin Foer that, quote, Philo-Semites are anti-Semites who like Jews. A little over a decade ago, Foer's comment became clear to me in an interaction I had with a candidate for the 2008 elections. Since he was a former cabinet member, the Reform movement had invited him to speak at our social justice conference, the Consultation on Conscience. While speaking to us, he began praising our community. Quote, I'm sort of a reformed public service, 38 years in the government, he said. Now I'm in the private sector, and for the first time in my life, I'm earning money. You know, that's sort of part of the Jewish tradition, and I do not find anything wrong with that. In fact, I enjoy it. Later, after being pulled aside by Rabbi David Saperstein and told that what he said was wrong, he marched back up to the podium to clarify. Quote, I just want to clarify something because I didn't in any means want to infer or imply anything about Jews and finance and things. What I was referring to, ladies and gentlemen, is the accomplishments of the Jewish religion and the Jewish people. You have been outstanding business people, and I compliment you for that. And if anyone took what I said wrong, I apologize. I may have mischaracterized it. You are very successful. I applaud you for that. Needless to say, his presidential candidacy did not last long. In a way, I would take these anti-Semitic attitudes over white supremacy, hostility on college campuses, and violence toward ultra-Orthodoxy any day. But they are still insidious. Last year, the Community Securities Trust, together with the Institute for the Jewish Policy Research, produced a report on anti-Semitism in Great Britain. What they found is that although 2 to 5% of people are consciously hostile toward Jews, and they have a definite system of hatred against us, another about 30% claim to like Jews, even love us. But yet they still hold one major anti-Semitic view, which they share with those who truly hate us. From these, researchers coined the term elastic anti-Semitism to show just how wide the phenomenon can stretch. The problem is not that these people love us for our perceived skill with money or power or loyalty to Israel. The issue is that the more that we are loved for these things, the more they will appear to be true, and thus the more fodder those who truly hate the Jewish people will have a claim that their views are mainstream and right. So after spending as much time as I have diagnosing the problem, the question remains, what can be done about anti-Semitism? In essence, our approach to each of these subcategories must be distinct, but they all have certain things in common. Each form of anti-Semitism must be fought with relationships, with truth, and with doubling down on our own identity. The key is knowing how to pursue each. Indeed, relationships matter, but we need to know which to foster. Unlike some other categories of anti-Semitism, it's not going to work to build bridges with white supremacy. Conspiracy theories are hard to break. And stories like the one that's made its way around about the Nazi last year who was invited to Shabbat dinner in Florida and reformed his views, those are anomalies. Instead, we need to build bridges with other faith communities and with law enforcement. After Pittsburgh, I was heartened by the outpouring of support from local Christian and Muslim communities. Those neighbors showed up for us. And God forbid, if anything were to happen in their communities, we would show up for them. This year, we took steps toward continuing to build bridges. We have 2 interreligious dialogue groups happening at TNT, including one specifically for women. We joined together to work on immigrant justice, feed the hungry, and hold vigils for trans lives. And though those don't seem to be overtly connected to anti-Semitism, they are. Any work together means that our relationship is stronger and that we would show up for each other in our time of need. Also, over this past year, the Bloomfield police have been true friends to Temple Ner Tamid. And the more connections we make around the community, the more vigilant eyes that they have to rely on to keep us safe. However, I think in those other cases of anti-Semitism, our relationships can be direct. In the spring, after Ilhan Omar's series of anti-Semitic tweets, rabbis that she was in relationship with got on the phone with her, and they began the process of educating her about the impact that her words had. These were her constituents. And though a slow process, I believe that these steps were in the right direction. In truth, Omar would never have taken their call if they hadn't already been working together on other things. And because of this, the answer to anti-Semitism on the far left and college campuses is not to criticize from without, but to teach from within. We faced this issue when I was working in Brooklyn. We had been involved in the Black Lives Matter movement, and after they came out with their platform calling Israel a, quote, genocidal state, many of our congregants asked us to pull out of that work. If we did, we might feel that we were protecting our integrity. But if we didn't, if we continued to engage, we would be in dialogue with them, and perhaps make sure that next time we would be in the room to make sure that these statements would not appear. Relationships are the means of fostering understanding. When a town council member compares the ultra-Orthodox moving into their town to vermin, we can leverage our relationship with them and educate them that this language will not be tolerated, even at the same time as acknowledging that there are challenges to changing demographics. Likewise, when our allies praise us and they simultaneously offend us, playing into tropes of dual loyalty and Jewish power, we can pull them aside. Explaining the danger of their statement is much more helpful than issuing a press release against them. Historically, the teacher was always better at changing hearts and minds than the prophet. But as much as relationships matter, so does truth. Whether in the public square or the college campus, shutting down discourse has never been the answer. Stopping inflammatory speakers only emboldens them more. Instead, we must fight ignorance with knowledge. If anti-Semitism is indeed elastic, our goal shouldn't be to change the hearts and minds of the 2 to 5% of the people who have fully formed pictures of Jews in their minds. Rather, it's to educate the 30% who are in the process of moving there. The number of white supremacists are small. We need to show the larger group who are within shouting distance of them that they shouldn't listen. In 2005, when Rachel Beda, a Jewish student at UCLA, was asked when applying to be on her school students' judicial board, quote, "Given that you're a Jewish student and very active in the Jewish community, how do you see yourself being able to maintain an unbiased view?" And then she was subsequently denied a place on the committee because of her faith. The problem was less with Fabian Roth, who asked the question and pushed the issue, but with the rest of the council, who listened to Roth and voted against Beda. It was only when their faculty advisor admonished them that they realized what they had done was wrong, and they voted again and let her in. Part of teaching the truth is knowing who to entrust with it. For example, many students may not realize that the campus rabbi may be the most visible voice for them, being the most visible Jewish presence on campus. But they're not the most powerful. In fact, it's more beneficial, say many administrators, to go to Jewish studies faculty with this problem. This year, I hope to gather parents of teens together and teens themselves to talk about strategies to deal with anti-Semitism that might arise on their campus. Part of being able to speak the truth is also having access to the history, to the language, and to the values, and to talk about anti-Semitism in those ways. There's been a number of wonderful books that have been published in the past few years by Deborah Lipstadt, by Barry Weiss, by Phyllis Goldstein. And each of these can help us to educate our friends and allies about the nuances of the world's oldest hatred. I hope to have many of these conversations here to give you the tools as well. We're also in the process of creating a relationship with the Anti-Defamation League, and we've signed up officially to be a congregation in support of the work that they do. I want to invite you to join me and many others in heading to their yearly conference, reading their materials, and going to their programming. I also hope to be an ally as you look at the education that your children are getting. How is the Holocaust taught in our local public schools? How is Israel presented? What role does Christmas play during December? Since attitudes start young, we can make local impacts by addressing these questions early. But as important as building relationships and seeking truth are, the most important thing that you can do in the face of anti-Semitism is to not give up on yourself. In the face of anti-Semitism, we might want to do one of two things. Out of fear, we might sacrifice our Jewishness to fit in, or we might embrace our Jewishness, but pull away from those things from which we are passionate because we're afraid we might face anti-Semitism there. The key is to not let anti-Semitism define you. People hate that which is elusive, that which they do not understand. The more open we are with our Judaism, the more defiantly we laugh in the face of those who seek to undermine us. Showing up at Temple Ner Tamid after Pittsburgh, that was an act of defiance. Walking into social justice spaces as a proud Jew, even if we might be unfairly asked to answer for actions of the Israeli government, that is an act of defiance. People should know that their neighbor, their customer, their friend is Jewish. For if they do, it will bring into focus the personal costs of ignoring anti-Semitism. One of the most important things to know in the face of anti-Semitism is that we have agency. We are not powerless. How we own that power, what we do with it, will hopefully bring us one step closer to creating a future much different than our history. Shana Tova.
So we take a few moments to pray for strength to walk that walk once we leave this room.
final time this morning, we turn to page 284, and we rise together to hear our shofar.
Tekiah, Shvarim Teruah, Tekiah, Tekiah, Shvarim, Tekiah, Tekiah, Teruah, Tekiah Gedulah, Areshem Tzvatenu Yerav Lefanecha Era Ram Vidisa Areshem Tzvatenu Yerav Lefanecha Era Ram Vidisa Mividu Mashim Mividu Mashim Lehol Tekiyatenu
So I'm going to invite us to remain standing as we move toward the concluding part of our service, page 286. And because there really won't be much time for announcements as we move toward these last 2 or 3 prayers, I just want to say to everybody a really happy new year to each of you. We will be continuing at 2 p.m. with our Tot service, 5 p.m. meeting at the middle school across the street for our Tashlich service, and tomorrow morning back here for our second day services. And if you've never been to our second day services, they have a slightly different feel to them.
It's just like this, but smaller.
Yes. And I want to invite you to really to check them out. And whether you're ending your Rosh Hashanah with us now or later over the course of the next few days, we look forward to seeing you on Yom Kippur, page 286. Elena.
עלינו לשבח, לדגול הכל, לתת גדולה ליוצר בראשית, שלא עשנו כגויי הארצות, ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגורלנו ככל המונם, ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא.
Page 289, and we're seated together.
ונאמר והיה אדוני אל מלך על כל הארץ היום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד ושמו אחד.
We pause at the conclusion of our service to think of those who we have loved and who we have lost this past year. And so as I say each category of mourning, I'll invite you to rise and share the name of the person for whom you're thinking and to remain standing. If you're in Shiva the first 7 days since losing a loved one, I'll invite you to rise and share their name. If you are in Shloshim, the first 30 days since losing a loved one, I'll invite you to rise and share their name. If you're in Shana within the first 12 months of losing a loved one, I'll invite you to rise.
Jack Schnall.
And if you're observing a yard site, if this week is the anniversary of a loved one's death, I'll invite you to rise and join those standing.
Lorena Wellington.
We turn to page 292 and we rise together.
יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה, בעלמא תברח ידותה וימלך מלכותה, בחייכון וביומכון ובחיי בכל בית ישראל, בעגלה ובזמן קריב ואמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה מבורך לעולם ולעלמי עלמיה, יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא, ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי דקדושה בריחו. לעילה ולעילה מכל ברכתה ושירתה, תושבחתה ונחמתה, דאמירן בעלמה ואמרו אמן. יהי שלום הרבה מן שמיה, וחיים עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן. עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ועל כל יושבי תבל ואמרו אמן. And we're going to just roll right into those last words, but we're going to sing them.
Yeah.
עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו. עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו. עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו. יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל. יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל. עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו. עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו. עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו. יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל. יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל. One more time, keep it going. יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל. יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ועל כל יושבי
Shana
Shana
Tova.
Tova.
Make sure to meet someone new. Shana Tova.
I'm posthumously step-Jewish because my wife's stepdad, who raised her and her sister, great guy. So, I'm in the tribe. I'm here. Check?
What? Still can't hear you. Yeah. Ready?
Thanks, Naomi. Steve?
Yes, I love that.
We have to spread out the